So thanks for coming. It's 12:30, so I will start early because I have a lot of stuff to tell you, so you better keep notes. Before I start, I want to give credit where the credit really goes. Several of my great collaborators, first of all, Eni Mustafaray, who's sitting right here, responsible for many of the ideas that you will be presenting, and Samantha Finn, who's sitting back there, responsible for actually implementing many of the things that you will see. And as you can see, an array of other wonderful Wellesley students, Leah and Catherine with a different last name right now, and Caroline and Lisa, Laura, Megan, Lindsay, Kylie and Yada, and I'm afraid there are more that I expect. So it's wonderful to be teaching at Wellesley because you have all of these amazing resources. And I know why you came here, because you worry a lot about what is happening to us, what's happening to our country. We hear about involvement of foreigners and foreign governments in our elections. That looks really upsetting and really scary. How serious it is, how we got there, and what we can do to stop it. I will run out of time before I tell you how we will try to stop it, but I will tell you how we got there. But, you know, if there is time and if you want to stick around, I have prepared a couple of slides for that. But let me start talking about this topic. So the one on the left is about Americans aping Russian schemes to deceive, and it is just last week. So Russians seem to be doing something terrible to us, to our democracy, and then Americans are doing something following what the Russians are doing. The guy on the right is famous for saying he wanted to take a page from the Russian playbook. So what the heck is this Russian playbook? You're lucky to be in the right place because I'll tell you, I found this Russian playbook. It looks like that. Anybody reading Russian here? I'll translate it for you. Okay, you can probably see some of these things, but you're too far to tell them. Fake news. This is a term that is confused often, but simply in my book, it means fake news are lies. But they are lies that they are presented in such a way that gives people the impression that they are news. Like this article, in quotes, article here, claiming that Hillary Clinton was part of a major scheme, a major ring to abuse young children. And they were operating out of a basement of a pizza in Washington, D.C. You know, this place has no basement. There was no really any sex ring there, but there were a bunch of people who believed it, and some of them actually got arrested. They tried to take a gun and go in and liberate the kids from this pizza gate. So, I mean, you read things like that and you would like to know if there is any evidence, and usually you would go to Google and say, is there any evidence for Pizzagate? And Google, this is in 30th of April 2017, will tell you, yeah, there is a lot of evidence. Here is 1, 2, 3. Every link shows evidence that this Pizzagate was a thing. And of course, the Democrats are trying to hide it, or the establishment, or somebody is trying to hide it. So as you're sitting comfortably there chewing your food, I would like to give you a little bit of homework. What should Google do in this case? How Google should react? Should it try to purge these pages from its index? Should it try to figure out what really happens and give you just the results that determine being the truth? Should it present both sides like a good journalist would do? Kind of see, you know, there are those people who say that there is no Pizzagate, and there's those people who say, yeah, there is Pizzagate there. You know, their kids have been abused there. So start doing your homework. We'll get back to it soon. Here is the outline of what I will try to tell you. There are two periods that I think make sense if you separate them by the 2010 Massachusetts senatorial elections. And with the work that we did here at Wellesley, we found several pieces of the puzzle that are still valid. It is the first part between 2004 and 2010, where there were efforts to manipulate search results mainly through elections, mainly through search results. And between 2010 and 2016, the efforts were to manipulate elections through mainly social media. In 2010, what happened is that these two efforts were joined. So I will stop a little bit to tell you an overview of the overall talk to see what we've found with the research we've been doing. As you can see, we have a little story to tell for each one of the elections between 2004 and 2016, and whatever happens now, efforts to solve the problem in 2018. But in 2004, there was manipulation of search results, but it was mostly for fun and profit. There were people that they thought, they had a sense of humor, and others who were making some good money manipulating Google search results. In 2006, we saw something that very few people actually have noticed. There were 97 electoral Google bombs. And I'll tell you soon what's a Google bomb, essentially a way of manipulating search results on Google. That they appeared to be actually pretty successful, at least half of them. But in 2008, Google tried to defend its search results because the last thing Google wanted is people to make fun of its search results and say, look, we can fudge them. In the 2010 Massachusetts senatorial elections, we saw a lot of interesting developments. We saw the rise of Twitter bots and Twitter bombs and these efforts of astroturfing. And what we saw in 2010 is something actually we keep seeing, at least most of the things that we saw in 2010. In the elections, in the US elections in November of 2010, there were another 61 Google bombs attempted, but they seemed to greatly fall flat. They did not manage to have any effect in Google search results. And then the world becomes very optimistic when we're looking for social media. In 2012, people think that we live amazing times because social media can actually create revolutions, make major positive impacts on the world. We have the Arab state revolutions there, and it seems that actually social media are so good in what they do that they can even predict elections, and we studied this prediction a little bit. In 2014, however, there are new voices that are being raised that worry that, well, what if Google itself does the manipulation? Instead of having other actors, like the Russians these days, what if Google itself starts the manipulation? Would we know it? Would we be able to defend against it? Is Google becoming essentially our decisive organization? And in 2016, we saw these Twitter bomb techniques that we discovered in 2010 be successful on Facebook, and I will explain why is this. So I will start one by one with the 2004 manipulation. So a little bit of prehistory. Early 2000, Google had just sprung as a amazing new technology company which was able to produce search results that most people would find very useful and informative. And it was arguing that it had ways of discovering quality of web information. It was really incredible. Many computer scientists and other naive people believed that. Despite, they probably never read Socrates, that quality is not something you can really measure, but Google was saying that. Two algorithms that Google had was PageRank and interpretation of anchor text, and I will explain what they are. Then we had the first famous Google bomb, the so-called miserable failure. Some of us are old enough to remember it. It was great laugh. But it also really showed the limits of what PageRank could do. And then we saw that advertisers actually were able to game search results to make a lot of money through what we call the mutual admiration societies. And there was a whole industry that rose up, SEOs, the search engine optimization. These were companies that they were holding conferences, and they were teaching people how to get their web page on top of everybody else. They were widely successful, but also there were some voices in this group talking about the ethical implications of creating an SEO. So people were referring to white hat SEOs and black hat SEOs, the obvious stereotypes for the colors. So what's PageRank? PageRank, and I'm taking this quote from Google's official facts about Google. PageRank works by counting the number and quality of links to a page to determine a rough estimate of how important the website is. Now, as a computer scientist, I know how to count things automatically and how to count a number, but quality, I have no idea how to do that. Google had found apparently a way, and it looked like that. You were just counting the links, and the more links you had in coming into your web page, the more quality and important quality you had and important you were. If you wanted to believe, then you would feel like that. Happy face with your page being pointed by others. That was the first thing that Google persuaded us. It was very successful in persuading people that they could actually know quality. And it was very unpopular, I know firsthand, to claim that actually PageRank can be manipulated. You were immediately very suspicious once you said something bad about Google back then. The other thing that Google had created was finding a good use for the so-called anchor text. Anchor text is what it used to appear on your hyperlink. People used to just say, for your information, click here. So click here was the anchor text, and it was pretty useless. But Google started saying, you know what? Usually, what people do, actually, after that, people start doing it even more. You could create an anchor text, link into a page, but the text itself could give you a description of the final page. So if you had a page that had a hyperlink talking about the premier women's college and you were pointing to Wellesley, essentially Google would say, okay, I found out that Wellesley is the premier women's college, even though, you know, the page probably did not say that. So it was external evidence that this was true. And anchor text is really what it was taken advantage of for the first Google bomb. It started as a joke, apparently as a joke between no more than 30 people who created pages with the text "miserable failure" pointing to George W. Bush webpage. People were very upset with George W. Bush back then. That was 2004, if you recall. And so whenever you were searching for miserable failure, George W. Bush would come up as number one. There were people who disliked this connection and immediately launched their own Google bombs, their own links of miserable failure. And very quickly, Jimmy Carter, Michael Moore, and Hillary Clinton filled up the next few places. Hillary was targeted even back then. I thought it was. In 2004, Google defended its algorithms and said, look, we know that PageRank and the other algorithms that we use are good. We're not going to fix that because that's what's really happening. You know, that's really, our algorithms find the truth in every other case. They apparently find the truth now. In 2007, they changed, and you could not find George W. Bush's page anymore. However, other search engines were still manageable. And so in 2009, as soon as Obama got into office, miserable failure was pointing to Obama. So the other technique that interested parties used in order to manipulate search results was to manipulate PageRank. And it was working like that. As you probably remember, PageRank is working with counting links coming into your web page. The more links coming into your web page, the more important you appear to Google. So if you are looking for a conspiracy in my talk, here it is. It's not just a theory, it is a real conspiracy. Several organizations coming out of this search engine optimization group created a whole system to exchange links. And that's what I called mutual admiration societies. It was like they were admiring each other and they would point to each other. And they had the rules laid out, as you can see in this slide. They were saying that in these efforts, we're looking at people that have page rank 6, and we try to all link to each other so we can all get into page rank 7. If you're page rank 5, there is a role for you. Even if you have page rank 4, there is a role for you. But in the meantime, you know, you will have to wait until you grow to become as important. So it was, the effect essentially was that if you were selling anything, including, let's say, illegal drugs like steroids, you could get a lot of links coming to your webpage. And so when you were looking for the medical effects or other effects of steroids, in this case, human growth hormone, you would see that every item would come up, would say, yeah, this is something that with $39.95 will make you thinner, taller, sexier, richer. That's how I came like that, you can see. It's not that Google did not care at that time about this kind of manipulation of the resources. In fact, it did care, and it paid dearly a few years later when it was fined with the largest fines at that time ever of a technology company, $500 million, because practically it was promoting the so-called Canadian pharmacies, in this case through advertisement. So, back to our previous question, what would you do if you were Google? Would you purge these sites? Would you determine really if the human growth hormone is the right thing and everything else in between? You know, every other site that you might end up linking to? What would you do? Well, we worried about that in this paper back in 2005. I'm proud to say that this is the first computer science paper that has the word propaganda in it. It also has the word web spam, which is really what these organizations were doing. What we discovered is that if you look at who's linking to whom, if you just look the links that are coming to suspicious pages, you can end up with what we call these mutual admiration societies. This dense link in the middle shows those who are collaborating essentially to create these fake links. And if you take a look about these fake links, you will see that they are coming from all over the place. They are sites that they are treating diabetes, they are selling drugs, you can find Dixie Chicks, you can, everything, dermatologists, lenses, juices, arthritis, you know, everything is there. You know, this is the conspiracy I was saying. So, what should Google do? We were raising this, we were providing back in 2005 a way of discovering these mutual admiration societies, and we were saying that, you know, you can find them by looking at the backlinks. However, the big question comes, what's next? What after you decided that this was kind of a conspiracy that was trying to mess up your data? Willing or not, they, meaning the search engines, are the de facto arbiters of what information users see. This is a message that Google did not want to see, did not want to hear, because essentially their reputation was resting on the belief that Google search results are perfect, or almost perfect. So what did they do? They made sure that me and other researchers could not find these mutual admiration societies. So in 2006, they purged the part of the API that was finding the backlinks without any warning. So suddenly, starting in late 2006, you could not use my algorithms to detect search results. So if there is a problem, avoid looking at it was kind of the reaction. And that was, 2006. We had a lot of time. We had 10 years until we ended up in 2016 to solve the problem. But I think the choice was like, let's ignore it for now. Then, it's one thing to make fun of George W. Bush. It's one thing to just fool Google so that you can become rich and sell your own junk. But it is a different thing to actually try to fool the electorate so that you can actually win elections. And that's what happened in the 2006 election. So there were 97 Google bombs that they were launched in a very organized way and in great fanfare and advertisement said, we will try essentially to promote negative results in search results of candidates' names so that hopefully they will lose the elections. The opponents will lose the elections. And some of them appear to be successful, and there was quite a bit of disagreement in the activists whether this was ethical or not. And that's how it started. 2 weeks before the 2006 elections, somebody who was involved into search engine optimization had the wonderful idea, what if we start creating Google bombs? So he says, guys, I've done my homework. I found 52 senators that we should badmouth. What exactly it means manipulating? It doesn't exactly mean yet that we will create fake news. It does not mean that we will create lies. What it means is that we will find negative reporting about these people and we will make sure that we promote them so they come higher up in the top 10 results. So that when people are looking for their favorite candidate, they will see the negative results higher up. The assumption being that if you see negative results on Google about somebody, trust in Google, you will start feeling that you should not vote for this person and therefore, you know, they may lose the election. 2 days later, the other side, the Republicans, not to be outdone, they had their own list of 45 targets. And there is a sequence of, in these last 2 weeks of the elections, of reporting how well we do, how many of the negative results we have managed to get into the other side. How would you figure out whether this was successful or not? We did the counting, but I wanted you to stop for a second and say, okay, so you had the Republicans and the Democrats, and there were the incumbents and the new candidates. Some of them got elected, some of them did not get elected. Of the targeted ones, what numbers would you expect to see in order to figure out whether your bomb was successful? I'll tell you what we saw. For the Republican side, it was like 50-50. Half of them managed to get elected, half of them did not get elected. The Democrats were much more successful. 73% almost were elected and 23 were not elected. What does it mean? Does it mean that the Democrats had much better techniques in promoting negative results? Or that the Republican-leaning were less smart and they would believe the Democrats rather the other way? Because you see, in general, in that elections, Democrats were very successful. They picked up 31 seats, and the Republicans lost. So it's not clear to say that this technique actually did win. Democrats were winning. It was a very different world back then than 2016. Democrats were winning everywhere. And why did the Republicans lost? I would say it does not matter really what happened. What matters is what you believe. If you believe that this was successful, then hey, hooray, we are so smart. If you believe that this was not successful, you say that's bullshit. If you have some ethical concerns, you just raise them, but people would not listen to you. Nevertheless, you know, this was bad publicity. Google did not want to have to deal with that, so it starts doing things. First, it starts demoting PageRank and it now announces more elaborate and secret algorithms. Miserable failure disappears. You cannot see this, make this as a joke. We did in 2008 what we now call algorithmic auditing. Back then we said that we will collect all the search results for a bunch of candidates, but today it has a fancier name. It is algorithmic auditing. I feel much happier to know that we started algorithmic auditing right here. What we found was that Google search results were following what I would think as a template. It was not very dynamic. You could not easily change on a weekly basis the search results. However, in commercial searches, not in electoral, you would see manipulation still present. So here's what I'm referring to. In 2007, the chief of search at Google, Mr. Singhal, said that PageRank is just one signal. I find it a little funny that Mr. Singal said that PageRank is a signal. But, you know, it says it's just one of 200 of those. It's not a big deal. Even if you try to manipulate search results through PageRank, you're not going to go too far. What we did looking at the results was that there was a pattern in the search results that you would get pretty much in the first, second, all the way to the first top 5 positions. You would see some basic information coming from the candidates' official campaign sites, the candidates' office sites, if this candidate was already somebody in office. You would see Wikipedia page. Wikipedia starts getting a lot of attention at that time. Google is using Wikipedia quite a bit in the top results. Some videos would come later on. So we saw that in the 59 most contested races, there was not too much movement. Google seemed like it had solved the problem. You could not fudge with its search results, at least when it was coming for elections. And that felt like, okay, they seem that they know what they're doing. They somehow figure that there is some kind of information about candidates, like their official standing, Wikipedia page, which seems to be a reasonable thing to promote, that was standing up there. So we're feeling okay until we started looking at the Massachusetts senatorial election. And that was a change. Up until then, search results, search media was the major way in which people were being informed about elections. Suddenly, you have Twitter and you have Facebook, and you use them, lots of young people in particular use them, in order to be informed about political elections. And what we found was that there were 3 new techniques that some operatives used. And I will tell you a few things about that. Twitter is used to launch Google bombs. This is amazing, I think. And that was the first and the last time, because actually the search, Google and Twitter listened to what we were saying and stopped that. The first tweet bots were used, and they showed how powerful they were. And we had this prefabricated tweet factory, which is something that's still operating. And we wrote these in the Web Science, and people were kind enough to give us the best paper award at that. I have to thank always Annie for having the insight of start collecting all of this data, because I would have missed it. Because it seemed like it was just a simple elections. Who would expect that in 2010 a Republican will win in Massachusetts the seat of the most liberal senator? That was the seat of Ted Kennedy, who had died just a little before, and it seemed like an easy thing. However, it was a very important seat. At that time, hard to believe, the Democrats had 60 seats in the Senate, and the Republicans 40, which means that the Democrats were filibuster-proof. They could pass anything they wanted, including the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare, what was named later. So having 60 votes was important, but that was also very important for the Republicans, because if they could get the 41st seat, they could essentially slow down the election, the voting of the Obamacare. But then Google did it to itself. It had this amazing idea, following really Bing's lead in 2009, and introduced in the 3rd location of the search results the so-called real-time results. So in very high up in the search result, it would introduce a little box that would tell you what the social media were saying about anything you were searching, if they were saying something. And in this case, you would see essentially what Twitter was saying. Why was that important? It was important because Twitter was a very small network, like 8% of people in America would use Twitter. It was tiny compared to Google, which was used by 90%. So having this small network influence what the vast majority of people would listen to was extremely powerful. And in fact, there were people who thought they would do that. So we found in the data collection that about 1/3 of all the tweets were repetition of the very same tweet. Repeating the same tweet is kind of stupid. It's like, people that follow you have already heard you saying something. Why do you keep repeating and repeating and repeating? The answer was that using Twitter, you could launch Google bombs in Google, because essentially you could influence the third location in the Google search results. That was incredible, wasn't it? And it was the first and last time that it was used, because after we presented the paper, Google took out these search results, the real-time results from the third location, and Twitter forbade the repetitive tweets. If you try to repeat a tweet right now, you will be told that you already said so. You have to do something else, like change the URL into a different nickname. Then there was this other technique that we saw, the prefabricated tweet factory, which works as follows. You know, you charge your troops. You have people waiting for you to say something, but people are busy. They cannot really start tweeting what you would like them to tweet, so you do the work. You start preparing daily the tweets for your troops to use. And the message is copy, paste, fire. Fire against whom? Against journalists who you dislike, or you would think that they don't give air to your message. So you start sending personal tweets to journalists telling them, hey, we are watching you. Be careful of what you say. We know that you are not independent, you are supporting the other side, and we're going to give you a hard time. So threatening journalists can be demoralizing. I mean, you think that you're doing your job, and suddenly you see random people, apparently real people. At that time it was real people. Now there are bots also who do that. But seeing real people telling you that something is wrong with you and we're watching you, you know, can have a chilling effect, right? The third thing that we saw was the rise of bots. We saw that there were some websites that they appear, which were, this is really the first of so-called fake news. Some things that looked like articles, videos in YouTube, saying that Martha Coakley supposedly was against Catholics becoming doctors or going into the operating room. And when we looked at the pattern of who was sending these messages, we saw what we named a Twitter bomb, a bunch of accounts tweeting for a small period of time, a little over 2 hours, replies. These were new accounts. As new accounts, they had nobody following them, so nobody knew about them. But they started targeting people who were interested in the Massachusetts elections through replies, and starting replies to these people. They did that to 573 users. However, because many of these people, the receivers of these these tweets, retweeted their tweets, they broadcasted to their audience, within a day we saw that it reached over 60,000 accounts. Who were the people who were coming up with this amazing technique? It turns out that they were the same people who were targeting in 2004 John Kerry with the Swift boat, with the TV advertisement. Now they were trying their imagination onto the web. And here is how they did it. It is, you know, how to influence elections in 5 simple steps. First, you create your misinformation. You create your website and you write whatever you want there. Nobody knows that you wrote that yet. Then you create your bots, your anonymous accounts. Again, nobody knows about your bots yet. What you can do, however, is important thing is the third step, in which you identify a community who feels angry, upset, you know, emotionally very charged, and you join. You have your bots and your, you know, operatives join this group. Be low for a while, and then you start targeting these messages by giving them the misinformation. They are emotionally charged, they are upset, and they see somebody who apparently was already part of the group telling them some new and amazing information. What they do next? They start spreading the misinformation. They do your job. You're done. You could even delete your account and people will not even know that you started that. This is an amazing technique that is very powerful and it's never going to end. In 2010, in the US elections, we had lots of Google bombs, but they were not very successful. The organizers of these Google bombs were the ones who believed that the previous Google bombs were very successful, but they disliked calling them Google bombs, so they called them grassroots search engine optimization. So we said, well, here, we'll do again the difference. But this time, we're not doing Google bombs. We're doing the same things, but we will call it search engine optimization, grassroots search engine optimization, giving a good name to an idea always, have a good effect on people. Not on everybody. There were several in the discussion that said, oh, come on, this is Google bombs. It's not grassroots. And, this is unethical. This is bullshit. But, of course, the people who started, they said, okay, here is our list. Everybody who wants to join, let's start targeting whoever we want to promote negative results. Again, did not have much of an effect. In fact, we found that throughout the 29 weeks, Google search results in the top 5 places did not change. Google would not promote in the above fold, at least, the whatever people would put in these results. How well did they do? Well, compared to the 2006 attack, which was 50-50, Republicans did much better, even though there were several that they were attacked. 2 out of 3 Republicans attacked actually managed to survive. Who really got busted at that time were the incumbent Republicans. It was the time that there were internal fight in the Republican Party, and essentially the newcomers were taking over. It didn't seem like these kind of Google bombs had any effect. But then again, Republicans were in the upswing big time. They were winning, extremely well every fight they had. Did these bombs had any effect? 2012, we have, how are we doing? Okay, we're still having some time. We see these claims of predicting elections. People look pretty cozy. People think that you can predict anything if you have the ability of looking at big data. The rise of big data, rise of revolutions, you can predict how well a movie will do in the box office next week. Yeah, okay, maybe that's possible. You can predict the stock market. Really? There were actually people who put their money into a new fund that would look at Twitter and decide how to invest. And you can predict elections. Can you really predict elections with social media? This is the paper that started all of this brouhaha. Some people in Germany that they looked at Twitter data and they said, look, we can predict the German elections so good. Is that nice? Shortly after that, there were some other Germans that they look at what they did and they realized they had cooked their data. They ignored the data that did not fit with the post-mortem predictions. Essentially, they knew what was the correct answer and they were managing the data so that the correct answer will come up. But they were using good science. The statistics they were using was very sound. Yeah, but you know what? If you already know what you expect to see, you can see them. We use this technique in nature. Physicists and astrophysicists and other scientists do that all the time. They look at how nature behaves and they try to create techniques to predict nature. But if you try to use that on society, it's not going to work. I mean, people change as they learn things. You already are different people than those who came in and started in your lunch a little earlier. Because you've heard me saying things, and it doesn't matter if you believe what I say or dislike what I say or do not believe what I say, you already think differently. So just using sound mathematical tools on society, it doesn't work. And even though we did go to Twitter people, the company that actually was bought by Twitter, USA Today, you may remember, that was telling you that on August 12, Mitt Romney was doing great and Obama was struggling. This was coming out of Twitter's political index that will tell you how well these candidates were doing. And, others went into extremes. Not only Obama and Romney, but you could see what the other candidates were doing. What we were telling them a year before that is, no, you cannot predict elections with Twitter. I think this poster was kind of clear, right? But not everybody wanted to believe us at that time. I can tell you a really sad story about how people reacted to this paper. But the story goes like that. You can publish post-mortem predictions after you know what happened, but you really cannot predict elections with social media. Why? Because these are high-stakes events. Stock market is like that too. There are a lot of people that want to actually, are very interested in what you're doing. So we developed what we call the unpredictability theorem. If you could predict elections based on social media data, those who dislike your predictions would mess up your data so that you cannot predict elections. Those computer scientists, they can smirk with the uncomputability theorem. It's not only them who dislike it, also those who like your data will try to make sure that your data remain. And there are those also, the trolls, those who will to make fun with everything, that they will try to mess up your data. You just cannot rely on big data to find the answer to life. Then in 2014, we have the worries about Google self-manipulation. I will go a little fast here so that it will leave time for questions. Some people start worrying that Google has too much power. And if Google was to self-manipulate on search results, essentially they can tilt the elections. And what they did is that they could even find out numerically how much effect this could have. These were psychologists who, gave fake search results to a bunch of Indian voters, and they saw that indeed some of them would change opinion about the elections based on this information, the ordering of information they got. So they tried to actually create an organization that would try to regulate Google. It's not that I do not worry about that, but what I was saying is that, look, the enemy is not Google right now. So yeah, you can audit Google's performance. You should do that. But the enemy is the others. Now we might call them the Russians, or the other Democrats, or the other Republicans who will try to mess up. The battle is elsewhere. We did do another algorithmic auditing in the 2016, and we saw that, yeah, with Google, pretty much, you can even predict every week with high accuracy the search results of the next week. That's not as good a prediction in Yahoo, or in Bing for that matter, because they can be messed up. And then 2016, what happened? We see lots of propaganda, lots of bots, foreign operatives coming and telling us what is true and what is not, and we have very polarized public. People are hating each other, and they repeat those who were successful in messing up your elections. You can call them Russians or whatever you want. Essentially, they do the same technique, but now not on Twitter, they do it on Facebook. So the first two steps are the same. You create your fake news organizations. They're there, but nobody knows about the fake news you have written. You create the fake accounts. They're there, but nobody knows about them. But then you have your accounts infiltrate Facebook groups that they feel very strongly about something. So, you infiltrate the Hispanics for Trump, or the San Diego Bernicrats, anybody else you want in this respect. And then when you're ready, you start sending them the fake news posts. And you watch them in the fifth step just do the work for you. You don't have to do anything else. You can even delete your account. People who are really upset and angry will do that. And this is the paper that was describing this parallel. And this is really the Russian page that I was telling you. This is the translation. This is the technique. And this is what I worry that cannot easily be stopped. As long as you have people who are feeling very upset about something, who are angry, you can infiltrate them, and then they're very easy to believe whatever you want them to believe. Because people tend to believe what they already matches their prior beliefs. We are basing our future decisions on our bias, and not on critical thinking. We use critical thinking when we have a math exam in front of our eyes and 50 minutes to complete it, and that will determine whether we pass the course or not. Then we're darn logical. But in most other decisions in our lives, we're emotional, in particular when it comes to elections. So where social media are very effective is essentially exciting the troops, making people who feel a certain emotional way, able to go out and vote. So make sure you vote. I will stop here. There are several things that we have been doing to try to solve the problem. We are forming fact-checking organizations, conferences. They're like a new one every month. There is a lot of funding that is supporting all of these. Facebook and Google have introduced fact-checking labels. Doesn't seem like they work well. They often have the opposite effect. They are deleting hundreds of pages and hundreds of accounts. We'll see how much effect they have. They have legislation in many countries. Some of the most enthusiastic supporters of legislation against fake news are authoritative regimes. Malaysia and Egypt love to create laws that would stop fake news because essentially they can control that way what is being said. So when we're thinking about solutions to fake news, we're usually thinking the US, but we should be thinking about the rest of the world. Are we close in solving the problem? No, we're not. We're far away. We want a lot of things. We want people to think, and the financial incentives towards those who will make a profit out of that to stop, and we want education. That's the one thing that we need. We need education. We need to know ourselves. Gnosis αυτόν in ancient Greek means just know yourself. Know your own biases, because that's what's going to fail you at the end. Know the echo chambers that you live in. Education is still the best tool we have. It is unfortunately a tool that we cannot easily duplicate en masse. We educate a very small part of the population. That's the problem. Thank you very much. So it's 1:17, is enough time for people to start running to classes, and those who want to stay, I would be happy to answer any questions I could. Yes?
Hi, so you were talking about how Facebook and Twitter, hello. Facebook and Twitter has taken down hundreds of pages and hundreds of accounts, right? I was wondering if you have any sense of who is doing that labor. So with regards to Facebook, are these content moderators who are taking down Facebook pages and accounts, and how have their policies and ways of adjudicating what is fake news changed?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's something that one has to worry all the time. Supposedly what they're doing now is that they are training editors, and these editors do a very diligent work, and they see the kind of networks, the kind of mutual admiration societies in their networks operate. And so I suspect that what they do is that when they find something that's very objectionable, and they have some way of measuring what means objectionable, some conspiracy theory, some ridiculous thing that apparently is designed to harm, not containing any useful information, then they probably take a look and see who's liking these pages, who's kind of repeating these pages. So they will try to find neighborhoods that this kind of misinformation resides, and they will try to take them all down. It's obvious that along with the operatives, they will take down accounts that they were just misled, they were just confused, they were just naive. But they try to play it, I think, very safe, because the last thing they want in this election as well, a brouhaha like the one we saw before, that people were able to show that here are all the cases in which Facebook should know that this was fake and they didn't do anything. In last elections, essentially, they misbehaved big time. They, when things got really important, and there was obvious manipulation of Facebook pages, they fired all the editors and they introduced artificial intelligence to do the job for them. And it took like a couple of days for hackers to, make fun of AI. AI for these kind of things is not at the level that can respond. AI can be good in driving cars alone around, which is amazing, but they cannot really figure out what is truth.
Do you think Google should be more transparent about how its search algorithm works?
Do I think that Google should be more transparent? I would love to, but they, of course, have their own reasons to be secretive. If they told the world exactly how they do it, then there will be hundreds of Googles out there that they're doing the same thing. So I don't think we can force them to do that. Others are trying, essentially, to do that. But what I think we could do is to have them give us data from search results to verify that there is no obvious tilt or manipulation in their search results. So without, essentially, give us the ability of doing auditing in a normal and regular way. Because, yeah, one has to worry. I worry not very much. The reason is that if Google was caught to actually manipulate results, it's going to be the end of it, right? It's going to be worse than AT&T's breakup. It's going to be something that the Congress will swiftly go and destroy the company, cut it in 50 pieces. So I don't think Google wants anything like that. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt if it gives us evidence that actually they are not doing it. Was a question up there? Yeah. Can you shout all the way back?
It seems more and more these days that when you search things, you're getting reports that somebody else is reporting about something that's being reported by somebody else. How do you get to the actual truth when you're searching?
I don't know. I don't know, really. Yeah. So it is an effort to kind of pass the buck on to somebody else. At the end of the day, you have to decide what is true and what is not. And the answer to that is the epistemology. I mean, we really need to start educating our students, sincerely, epistemology. How do we know what we know? Why do we believe that this is true? In particular, for many of us who are in the sciences, we have an easy time with this question because you can do an experiment. You can actually create proofs for that. There are very few things in life that you can actually find the truth. These are called facts, and compared to everything that's going around us, facts are very few. Most of the things we believe are opinions. So there is no shortcut in solving the problem that way. Now, a dangerous idea, I think, is to say, we'll use AI for that. Not this stupid AI we have now, but the next layer of AI that's going to be much better, and it's going to tell us what is true and what is false. I worry about that a lot because essentially, because the world is complex and we do not want to admit it, we would like some superior entity. We used to call them gods. Now we call them artificial intelligence. We would like another superior entity to tell us what we should believe and what we should do. But that's not a solution. Essentially, it's like saying, if you create dumber humans who will just trust what is presented to them, the world is going to be better. I'm afraid with the new technologies that we are developing, we're creating couch potatoes who are sitting in front of a couch with a big infinite bag of chips, watching poor quality cereals because they feel good. We try to create, I think, a world like my cat. She doesn't eat chips, but you know what I mean. That's what I worry. So education is the only thing I can propose, and in particular epistemology is the one thing that we should add in our education. Not just in the sciences, which, theoretically we do it more often, but in everything. So, yeah. Yeah. Yes, I did. I was only remembering your last name, and I did not want to say Groth. Yes, Simon.
On the slide previous to this one, you said something about changing financial incentives as part of the solution. Could you explain what precisely you're talking about?
Yeah. So the way that this financial model works, both for Google Ads and for Facebook, and Twitter tries to do that, essentially they give you the opportunity, you being any merchant who wants to sell your stuff, to create advertisement. There are lots of advertisement out there, but the ones that will be clicked are the ones that will attract you to click. These are the so-called clickbaits. So when you let people, the ability of creating clickbaity titles, you're drawing a crowd into a world that you have no idea where it leads. So it might lead you to a fascistic or Nazistic site after a first click. Also, giving the ability to control your audience, saying, I want to have middle-aged, green-eyed white men with an income of $120,000 and up, is something that you can do on Facebook. And it might not look like a bad deal for the description I just gave, but if you say, I want actually to find this minority, Jewish haters, and give them this message, then it's problematic. So how fine-tuned you allow your tools to be is part of the problem. How much incentive you provide for people to create misinformation, to create, let's say, the so-called Macedonian teenagers, is part of the problem. Facebook gains enormously from that. Google gains enormously from that. But somewhere there, there must be a decision made. You cannot tune too finely to your audience. You cannot create too much of a clickbaity of a headline. These are all ethical questions that I'm posing. It's not easy to create a law that says, this is keyword, that's not. However, the only way that we have so far to deal with ethics is through laws. Laws are complicated, they come very late, they are clumsy. But at least, I think they should start from there. We have 2 more minutes before 1:30. Glad to see you have all the answers. Thank you.